Hey guys, this is Christina, and you're watching Vox and Guest, and I'm so excited because I have my buddy here, my buddy JD from Death Pigeon.
How are you doing, Christina? Thanks so much for having us.
We have to coo at each other. It's funny. Every time I do an interview and I start a show, I'm like, I'm so excited, and people are going to think I just say that, but I really am so excited every time. But I'm extra excited because I know we don't have Neil with us today. Neil is off being musical in another way. But you and I are going to have some fun. We have so much to talk about. So I'm going to start this, my friend, with, you've probably been asked this question before, maybe not, but let's do it. So the name Death Pigeon implies the existence of a life pigeon. So I need to ask you, in like a post-apocalyptic Highlander kind of pigeon situation, who comes out triumphant? Is it life pigeon or is it death pigeon?
Oh, it's always a death pigeon. Always death. It's like in Star Wars, isn't it? As much as everybody's rooting for the good guy, the bad guys are the best. And it's like the death pigeon, really. I think it's going to be the same thing. Yeah, as much as the life pigeon probably has got, I don't know. Do you think the life pigeon would wear sort of like unicorn trousers and just be really sort of like really out there?
Oh my
really
God,
colourful?
I hope so. Now, yes, now that's headcanon. That absolutely is exactly what the life pigeon is wearing now, and maybe like a jaunty cap or something.
Yes. Why not? And maybe a bubble pipe, just for extra effect.
I don't know now. Okay, you're making the life pigeon sound kind of cool, JD. I don't know.
I think
you're talking it up. Unicorn pants and a bubble pipe, and now we got a jaunty cap. And so, what are you rolling up in to this full on life death match existential struggle? What are you coming in? Are you coming in your current gear? Are you going to be also wearing some form of mystical pants? I mean, you got to represent.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Probably. I haven't really quite thought about it. I think maybe, I think there's definitely going to be some mystical pants there. It's not going to be unicorn because obviously the life pigeon's got them. So right. It's good. I don't know, turtles. I like that. I mean, why not?
Ooh, turtle pants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why not? I mean, robots. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe stick with wildlife. Maybe turtles.
Robotic turtles.
Fish. Robotic turtles.
That would actually go really well with the rewiring of humanity, but we'll get to that. Okay, so you're gonna vote for yourself. You're gonna be the supreme winner of the life pigeon death pigeon Highlander match. I didn't know who I was rooting for entirely until now, but I think I'm gonna have to go with you. So,
I mean, to be fair, if it's a match, it's probably not really going to, spark off that much because I'm getting on a bit and I'm going to need to sit down. So it's probably going to be a case of, this sounds like a great idea. Do you want to go to the pub and get a pint?
Okay. All right. So the goal now is to get the life pigeon just absolutely smashed, and then you can defeat it without having to get up much. I like it. I think we've got a whole. You're going to need to do like a video series or something on this. You're gonna need some animators. You're going to need the whole, and I won't take too much of the profit for being 50% of the brain trust. I'll take.
Oh no, definitely 75. I've never thought about it before. So yeah, you can take the bag on that one.
Well, you do have to buy the turtle pants though, so keep in mind your overhead on this project. But we can negotiate that later.
Do you know what? The pants will be upcycled, definitely. Do you know what I mean? So just thinking ahead slightly. I don't know what
I like it. I like it. All right, I think we're done here. That's it. That was really all I needed to add. No, I'm
great. Thanks.
So okay, so let's bring it back to earth just a tiny bit. So how long have you been in music personally, and how did you and Neil meet? Because I know you mentioned that you wanted to make music since you were really young, and then the band started in 2020. So not to say that you're not really young, but it seems like there might have been a gap there. So I'm just wondering, when did you get into it? What were you doing? How did you hook up with Neil and form Death Pigeon?
So I guess I was about 15 when I started playing. I'm 39 now. So that's definitely a chunk of years. I'm not going to work it out because my maths is awful. And I started on guitar, on acoustic, and then I went to electric, and then I went to bass with the passing of Peter Steele from Type O Negative in 2010. And this is the interesting thing. I've been in a few bands over the years. Nothing has really ever sort of done anything. It's just basically been more of a jamming project, just a bit of fun. I've got an old tape up there, up on the shelf, which has just got one song from an old hardcore band that I was in from when I was like 17 years old. And I haven't listened to it in about 20 odd years, but I want to at some point.
You do, and you have to release it too. Now that you've said it, now that we know it exists, you're gonna have to put it out there.
Yeah, I might have a chat with the guy that I was in the band with and see whether he's willing to do it. It might be under just mine, his name, or Death Pigeon, or what, I don't know. But yeah, it's awful. So yeah, I definitely might do something with that. But
okay.
I think music for me was such a big part of my life growing up that I always wanted to learn. And when I did start learning at such a young age, you don't realize how long it's actually going to take you, and you don't realize what's involved.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So I think with picking up different instruments here and there along the way, I think I must have left it for about maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe longer in between, going into early 20s. There was a lot of issues, early 20s, mental health issues and stuff like that. So I wasn't actively playing as much then. But one thing I always wanted to do more with a band, but all the bands that I was in, no disrespect to any of them, I'm friends with all of them still.
Didn't sound disrespectful.
Everybody was just quite happy and just doing what they wanted to do, but I wanted to try and see if we could get something off the ground,
Okay.
But here's the question: how do you get something off the ground? How do you start a band? It's a huge question.
It really is.
You find people, reach out to them, find them online, then you've got to sort of come together. What if you're not compatible? There's so
exactly much. So, musically, philosophically, everything. It's like a marriage. It really is. It's at least like dating very intensely. So yeah, okay. So yeah, it's true. How do you get it off the ground? So how did you?
I sort of left it for years thinking, nothing's going to come of it, and I carried on playing just because I just wanted to keep on playing.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, I started work for a large company in the north of Bristol, and Neil was there. And it was I don't know if you've seen the advert on YouTube of two metalheads that see each other in like a 7-Eleven.
Yes, in the supermarket or a 7-Eleven. Yeah. Exactly. The shirt. Yeah.
So I was employed as IT manager, and and Neil was working for the development team. So I sort of was being shown around the place, and out of everybody who was nice and clean cut and everything, there was Neil, still nice and clean cut in case he listens to this, but obviously with long hair and beard. And I was like, "Ooh, metalhead."
There you go. You knew the signaling was there. You knew.
Absolutely. So then we just started talking, and I told him that I was busy writing a short story. And I wanted to put some music to it. This didn't happen all at the same time, and obviously this was over months. And then he said that he'd been in bands, he'd been signed, he'd been all this and the other. And we started jamming, and we thought, wow, do you know what? Actually, something might come of this. And, it just went from there, really. And then we got together in like 2019. We started talking about Death Pigeon, and then in 2020 we went to see Sisters of Mercy live, and we were talking about the band there as well. And the very next day, lockdown happened, and then it was pandemic city. Then wasn't it? Then so the band was we released one track in October 2020, which is a cover of a Woods of Ypres song, and then I got ill in 2021, so the band was put on hiatus then.
Oh boy,
and then 2022 we started, but my ill health was still present. So. Oof. Then so basically it's just been a roller coaster.
We should
have actually come up with something in 2021, but we waited until 2023.
Man, I thought the Life Pigeon, Death Pigeon thing was going to be an intense battle, but it seems like just getting Death Pigeon itself off the ground was at least as difficult. But I have to ask the name, okay? Because as I mentioned to people a lot, and I think it's especially important for this show because I've watched shows where metal fans interview metal musicians, and it's like this language that twins speak. They're talking about blast beats and blarg and this and that and whatever. And I mean, I know for all the world I look like a total metalhead. But I am new really to most of this music. I mean, I listen to things that people called metal, you know, back in the day. But one thing I've learned is that metal is like a nesting genre, right? And then you've got black metal and death metal and new metal and industrial metal and, you know, alternative metal and like all this other, there's just so much metal. But I and first I'm realizing a lot of the stuff that I thought that I was listening to that was metal was not metal. It was not metal at all. I can't even think of, I mean, I used to listen to like the hair bands in the late 80s and the 90s, which, you know, they kind of fancied themselves, I think, metal adjacent in some ways, you know, when I was into King's X and Cinderella and this stuff or whatever. But like, again, sort of like the Splenda of metal. I think not really the, you know, now I'm listening to you, I'm listening to Shovel Monster, I'm listening to Isaac Van and like it's a whole other level. But so my very long-winded point here is that I want people to understand when I'm coming at an interview like this with you that I am not, you know, if metal fans interviewing metal musicians is like the language that twins teach each other, I'm really just new to the language, right? So this is a whole other musical language that I'm just learning. And what I love about it is that even coming to it fresh, you know, not really knowing the genre, not really knowing, you know, all the bands that, you know, like guys will throw around Opeth and all these, you know, Cradle of Filth. And I'm like, okay, I've listened to a couple of those. I'm doing my homework, but it's still all very new for me. Yeah. Your music is so good that it doesn't matter to me that the genre is different. But what catches my eye at the beginning, and here I am bringing the question back. It was a long ride, but we got here. Thank you for staying with me and paying the toll. Are the names. Okay. The names of metal bands are both at once hilarious and fantastic. And I've got to ask, when you and Neil were talking about it, or was it something that you brought? How did you come up with Death Pigeon? Because it's just such a great name and it's so memorable. And it looks great on a shirt. But where did it come from? Where the hell did Death Pigeon come from?
Well, thank you for the compliments.
Buried in that long soliloquy. I mean, sorry about that.
No, God, no, not at all. We, as people outside of Death Pigeon, we are, we don't take ourselves too seriously. We like to have a laugh. We're very self-deprecating. We're very sarcastic. And I think when we were looking at names, I wrote a list of names of bands, and they were all sort of animal orientated, like Octopus Driver and stuff like that. And I was just like, well, why not? You know, I wanted to use Raven, but then that had been used so much.
A lot. Okay.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Right, okay, because I wanted to harken back to Edgar Allan Poe, you know, and stuff like that. And and then Neil was just like, come on, you know, let's just make it a bit more sort of lighthearted, because we didn't want to name the band and then for people to think that we were a parody.
Sure.
But we didn't want people to think that we were sort of coming at this from too much of a sort of a staunch, sort of hard sort of area. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. That's a real balance. Yeah.
So we just sort of thought, well, if we run the business as a business, as you're meant to run it, and then we run the social media as nice and as kind and as everything as we can, and try and bring people in and try and show them that heavier music is not all that it seems to be in people's imaginations and in people's minds.
Absolutely.
And when we came up with the name, it was just coming up with something that was sounded, as you said, that was memorable, a bit silly.
Yeah.
If you said it, people were like, "What? Whoa! Say that again! What? A death pigeon? What is that?"
Yeah.
And I think more than anything, it just made us laugh. And then I had it tattooed on my arm. And,
I know. I was like, you know, committed to that name, man. That is, and that is not going anywhere. No, it's brilliant because it really does. That was one of the first things I noticed online. You know, as I saw all these musicians crossing my feed, and I was like, Death Pigeon. I love that so much. What is going on here? And it completely got me to click. And then I found out how great you are and how nice you are. And
Oh,
then
thank you.
getting into the
Oh,
music.
that's
So
fun.
it's brilliant. Like you have such a hook with that name. And what's great too is that I have to get a shirt from you. We're going to have to talk, but I imagine people wearing them out, that's the kind of shirt that will stop people, like, wait, what does your shirt say? And then you've maybe got a whole new fan right there, which is just mwah, my chef's kiss to you on that one. I love it. I love Death Pigeon. I love the whole
Oh,
thing. So,
oh, oh, thanks so much.
yeah,
That's
no,
lovely. Thank
but
you.
so okay, so Neil, again, as we said, is not here, but just to orient everybody for those who don't know. So you are the mind behind the stories behind the music. Okay. You
Yeah,
do the
that's right.
bass, you do the vocals,
Yeah,
and you do the lyrics, I guess,
that's right.
based on the stories. And then
Yeah.
Neil is playing guitar, does a lot of the mixing, the mastering, and you guys are both in the creation piece of it.
Yeah.
So like there are just so many questions. I'm trying to figure out where to start. So let's start with the albums. Okay. So you have
Okay.
2 albums that you've released that I could at least find. I don't know if there are more.
No, that's it for now.
Okay. So yeah. And so the first one, volume 1, Light Through the Dark, very orchestral,
Yeah.
very as I'm listening to it, I'm going, God, this would make such a great soundtrack for a movie. It's got all this presence, and unless I was missing it, not a ton of vocals on that
No,
album, right?
no. Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
like I didn't know if there were little bits in there that were sort of backgrounded but I wasn't noticing anything. So it comes off as this incredibly atmospheric, and I again, I sat down as a non-metal head and I'm listening and I'm going, well, holy shit, like this is really beautiful. There's so much in it. And I wanted to ask you, first of all, how did you get so much feeling and intention and atmosphere across without a single word? Because a lot of songs rely on the lyrics for that kind of thing, but you didn't. So
Yeah.
talk me through the process of that album, like just from the beginning to, tell me about volume 1.
Sorry, I'm a bit stunned by your absolute kindness.
Oh,
It,
shouldn't be, but I'm glad.
no, but well, thank you for everything that you're saying. The volume 1 was it's kind of it's a really heartfelt EP for me because we wanted to put together something that we were trying to find our sound. I was still very ill at the time. I didn't want to start the album if I couldn't finish it.
Yeah, yeah,
So we weren't going to pick that up and then find out that, oh, hang on, John's been hospitalized again. We're not going to be able to do anything. So we that's sort of on the back burner. I also wanted my mum to listen to something that we put together. And even though they're covers, and we love covers, covers have taught me everything that I know about music. They've taught me musical composition. They've taught me, songwriting. They've taught me so much. And
oh yeah,
I wanted to sort of, in a strange sort of way, I suppose, say thank you to the bands that have sort of, to some of the songs or some of the bands that mean a lot to me.
yeah.
And there are heavier bands, but I wanted to do something that wasn't death metal, wasn't black metal, wasn't in that wheelhouse. I wanted people to hear us. And all of the atmosphere was generated by Neil. I had nothing to do on that album other than play bass because I was very ill at that point.
Okay.
And I was basically recording each song took me a month to record, just the bass. So
Okay.
Neil
Wow.
did everything on that. He played the drums, he played the guitars, he set up all the orchestrations. I'd said to him that I wanted to extend some of the tracks by adding an orchestrated start.
Yeah.
He came up with all of that following the chord progressions of the songs.
Wow.
He did everything. He added in, he asked me, he said, because he knows I love the hurdy-gurdy, and I've only ever heard the hurdy-gurdy being played in one metal track, as far as I'm aware, and that's by Dark Tranquillity.
Okay.
And I really wanted. I didn't have enough. I didn't have enough lung capacity to be able to sing, so we thought we would keep it instrumental, and we'd
Yeah.
add in a hurdy-gurdy on one or two of the tracks just to take the vocal melody
Okay.
and to give that sort of really weird, because hurdy-gurdy is not a very straight sound, is it? It's a very sort of weird sort of
It's named very
haunting.
well. Yeah,
Exactly. Yes,
it really
exactly.
is. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I think Neil, honest to God, Neil just nailed it absolutely. And he
I
did
would agree
everything.
with that.
He did everything. I just played bass. That was it. I had nothing more to do with it other than let's do these songs. I played bass, and then that was it. I was sleeping 19 hours a day. I was getting up. I was recording a little bit and going back to bed. And yeah, I
Oh,
had
man.
nothing to do with it other than Neil. He literally, and it was at that point that I thought to myself, "Oh God, why is he working with me?" I mean, I've
Aw.
heard the other stuff that he's been doing. I've heard all the other albums that he's been mixing and mastering for people,
Mm.
and his stuff as well. And I'm just
Mhm.
like, oh, dude, don't work with me.
Aw. Well,
You're
but
better
he
than
was
that.
smart. He
But
knew once you were better what he had in you. So don't downplay yourself. But I understand that feeling though, especially if you're ill and you have this idea for a project and then you can't really be in it. And it's, I mean, again, it's you'll have to pass on what I said to Neil too, because I guess it goes largely to him, but it just really from the choices and everything, it's still such a personal album, for both of you. And I think that it's a testament to how well that was put together, that it's such a great companion piece when you put the two volumes together, that there's a musical through line there, that there's an identity in what you've done that shines through from your pieces to the ones that are on the first album, the covers, I mean, you really, to craft something that's so identifiable and so just sort of emblematic of who you are as a band, and especially now knowing the backstory, which is tremendous. I mean, I'll ask, you seem to be doing much better? Are you fully healed up? Are you all good now? Is everything kind of resolved or mostly resolved? How you
I'm
doing? Because it sounds
I'm
like you went through so much. I mean, just so much for
I'm
years.
yeah. I know I'm still going through it. I'm still here. My wife has been a gigantic help. Without her, I genuinely wouldn't be here, because she found me unresponsive in bed, suffocating. So if it wasn't for her, I genuinely wouldn't be here.
Oh
Um,
my God.
and
Well, thank
my
goodness for her.
lungs.
Thank her for all of us, please.
Yeah,
Ooh.
I will. No, I think physically I'm a lot better. My lungs are still pretty damaged. I'm on CBD therapy, which I'm
Okay.
trying now, and I'm on a few other things which we're trying. I've got mentally, I'm screwed.
Mm, it's
But
a lot.
that's always been the case really ever since I was a kid. So
A lot of people,
nothing
yeah.
really alters there, right? It is what it is.
But you wouldn't be Death Pigeon otherwise, right? So I
Right.
mean,
Yeah, exactly. But no, thank you for asking. No, I am.
absolutely.
I'm certainly a lot better. I'm now
Okay.
sleeping probably a lot less than what I have ever slept, but then I couldn't sleep any more than what I have for the past 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah,
So,
if you had about 4 or 5 hours a day awake, you pretty much had to be up
yeah,
from there. So that's a good thing.
yeah.
But wow, so, I mean, I'm so glad that you're okay. I
Thank you.
mean, so many people have been grappling with similar things, and it's just over years, and if you're already starting out behind the 8 ball with mental health, which we can get to a little bit later, that certainly
Yeah,
doesn't help. So I'm just glad that you're on the mend and you're back
thank
to
you.
singing, which is a very good thing. But so I wanted to ask you, because you do have Mutter on volume
Mhm.
one,
Yeah,
and then you just released like a month ago your collab with Narak,
yeah.
covering Mutter. So obviously this is a song that really resonates with you, that you must really love. Is there a story attached to that, or it's just something that musically turns you on? Or
Whenever I cover a song, I never cover a song with the original meaning of the song from what the band created. I always add my own meaning. So I added
Okay.
this meaning to the track, and part of the reason I think for not adding vocals on volume one for it was because I wanted it to be. I wanted I wanted Mum to see that there was a track there called Mum, basically,
Right.
and not to have the meaning of what Rammstein has
Right.
as it.
Right. Because that's not something you want to share with your mother if you like her anyway. So yeah.
Not really exactly.
And
And
it's
I
a very
think,
different song without the lyrics too. I mean,
yeah,
it's
it
a
is,
much more tender thing. So
yeah.
okay. Okay. So
And I think
I'm sorry, go ahead. What is the meaning that you imbue it with? Like what is it?
I I just wanted to say thank you to Mum for everything. That's basically how I interpret it. And I think if you don't add lyrics, if it's just a vocal melody, and just, definitely don't
Yeah.
add the lyrics. And then
Yeah, there's really no way to twist that to me.
no,
Okay, yeah.
exactly.
All
And
right.
I think I just wanted it to be, because Mum's all about melody. Mum loves to have a melody. So
Yeah.
I think we wanted to make it as melodic as we possibly could, so Mum could listen to it. At least she
You
might not
did.
like it,
No, you
but
really
she could
did.
listen to it.
So did she like it? How did she feel about it?
Yeah, she's listened to volume one, and she has. I think she's liked it. I think she's liked it. Definitely. I
Okay.
think it's.
Hard to read, but we're going to go with yes. If she didn't say she didn't like it, then she loved it. Let's go with it.
Let's go with that. Let's go with that.
No,
Absolutely.
it really, I love that because, and what you said about the song and the covers in general, it fits very well with what I know of you. Cause again, when I prep for the show, I listen to everybody's, complete catalog, and I'm, diving in deep, and, and I've been steeped in Death Pigeon, if that's a phrase that one can use for the week, and it's great because when I was interviewing Dion Powder Band, we were talking about how nobody really listens to albums anymore. People listen to singles. They'll hear something that is just completely out of context. It's a standalone thing. And you lose something that way, and I really haven't been able to sit down and just listen to an album straight through until now, like since college. So, a year or two. But, but I really loved being able to do that with this, because volume one, I felt like, was a great introduction, which is really right what volume one of anything is going to be, to the band. And so, getting into volume two, okay, the Rewiring of Humanity, and I'm going, okay,
Just before you do, sorry, Christina, may I
please
cut you
back
there
me.
for a second?
Go ahead, tell me where.
Sorry, just 2 seconds. I just wanted to go back to the cover with Nirok.
Yes. Absolutely.
Just slightly, just for a second.
Take as long as you want. Narok is a buddy of this show and the band, so we're always good to talk about Narok and their gigantic mug. We'll get to that later.
No, I didn't want them to feel as if we were. As
moved on. No, I'm glad. My
exactly,
ADHD,
exactly.
I'll go right past it. I'll talk myself out of my own questions. So thank you for catching me.
That's absolutely fine. Sorry, I hope you don't think I was being rude.
No, I love it. Go for it. So the collab.
Yeah, so Vile hit me up a little while ago and asked if they could put lyrics to it, and I was like, oh, I'm not really in a good place right now. Can we not? And then he hit me up a little while later and said, "Can we please?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, carry on." And ever since I heard that band, and I heard the music, the vocal melodies, and the vocals, I've just been enchanted with their voice.
Same.
And to think that they'd actually want to collab with us, and then to do that was spectacular. And it may be looked at as just as a cover, but it's superb, absolutely superb. And I just thank them for wanting to
it's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful, and the way that you two bands came together on it, where it's distinctly each of you, but it's not it's not a clash, it's not a competition, it's just this blend of these ethereal, gorgeous vocals, and then the instruments. I was so excited when I saw that there was a collab coming between the two of you, and then when I heard what it was going to be, I was like, okay, this has got to be good. And it was even better than I thought it would be, because you guys brought it. You completely, you really did. All of you completely brought that. And when we talked to Narak last week, we talked about it a little bit, and but it's good because I got a different element of the story of how it came to be. But I'm glad you came back to that. We got to give big ups to Narak. So so as I was saying though, with volume 2, okay, and that was out very recently,
February.
right?
February the 10th. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there's just so much to say. So I all good. But I sat down with it and I'm going, okay, I'm wondering how much it's going to be like volume 1, and then I saw it was based on a story. And then I saw it was based on a story by someone who just happened to have the same name that you do. And I thought, well, okay, this is, I don't know how I missed that in all of our dealings back and forth before that. But so I went on Amazon UK, I bought the story, and I read it, and first of all, guys, okay, everybody watching, seriously, the Rewiring of Humanity was very easy to get on Kindle. Okay, it's very fairly priced, but you're going to want to get it, not only because I just found it a genuinely good story on its own, but I listened to the album the first time before I had read the story, which I'm actually really glad that I did. And then I went back and I listened to it again with the story, and it's sort of like putting on 3D glasses in the movie theater, where you're enjoying the thing as it is, and then the story and the dimensions of it just pop in a completely different way. So I have a billion questions. They're all crowding into my head, but I'll start with a simple one. The story, I'm assuming, came first.
Yes.
Okay. Correct. So how did you get the idea for the story, and how much of it can we talk about? Because obviously we don't want any spoilers, but I have questions I will ask if you're okay with talking about it a little bit, and then I won't if you don't want me to. So
I'm absolutely fine with talking about anything. The only thing I would say is probably, do you know what? I'm fine with
not
talking
the
about
ending.
I mean, to be fair, yeah. I mean, maybe not. I don't know.
No, we save the ending. The ending. You cannot ruin that ending. So you guys got to go read it just for the ending, because we're not going to tell you what it is. So, but okay. So how did that story? Because you're such a nice, sweet pigeon, and this story is really intense. So what side of JD did we get there? Where did the genesis of that start?
I think, well, firstly, thank you for buying it. I didn't.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. I'm so glad I did.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you for reading it. You got the side of me that I hide from everybody. You got the non-public persona. You got me. That's me. That's gotcha. The socially unacceptable side, probably.
Well, the less socially palatable side, maybe. But no, yeah, okay. So this is really a deep peek into the psyche. Then that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing with putting together something like this is you've got to. I don't even know if I did it right, to be honest, but I think
you did.
Thank you. You've got to put a bit of yourself into it, I think. And
absolutely.
I think I could, as much as I put on a brave face and I smile and everything else, it's always basically, isn't it? It's always the people, like we saw with Robin Williams, rest in peace.
Yep.
It's always the people that smile, and it's always the people that are really happy are the ones that are mostly, troubled in some way. And I think
struggling. Yeah.
And I think putting together this, I just wanted it to be something that I wouldn't have to hide. I didn't want it to be sort of a smile on the outside, but yet somebody screaming on the inside.
Yeah.
I wanted it just to be, if people think it's grotesque, then it's grotesque. If people think it's beautiful, it's beautiful. If whatever they think it is, I'm sure it is. I've always been a fan of horror films. I've always been a fan of sci-fi. I love the idea of robots killing humanity.
Yeah.
And I think, and I think, I think the imagination of James Cameron, where he came from with the Terminator, with the book from the Soldier, and with Alien, and with all of this, even Traumaville. I love Traumaville from a horror
Oh,
perspective.
I don't know that one. Okay, I'll have to. I always keep mental notes when I do these interviews of songs I have to listen to and bands I need to get to know, and now movies I need to watch. So okay, Traumaville.
Traumaville, I believe they're Canadian picture house, and they deal. They've been gone, I think, since the late '60s, early
Oh wow.
'70s, I think.
Okay.
And they do sort of grotesque body horror, sort of, but in I'm not going to say in more of a sort of light-hearted way.
Okay.
And they were responsible
As
for
you do.
Toxic
Yeah.
Avenger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And they were responsible for Toxic Avenger and so many great stories over the
Oh,
years.
that makes sense. Okay, that makes. I guess we should back up a little bit because while I do want everybody to go read it, I think to get the full picture of the album as we're discussing it, just very briefly. So the story is called The Rewiring of Humanity, just like the album, and the song titles are the chapter titles. So you can and should, I would say, listen and read together, because there's a whole motif there. You don't want to miss out on it. But and again, it's I want you to understand the fact that I enjoy your music as much as I do, and that I enjoyed your story as much as I do. I would not call myself vanilla by any means, but I am definitely not someone who's going to go for a gore kind of thing, or like a black metal, death metal kind of thing at first. Like I will get there, but that's not my wheelhouse. That's not what I'm familiar with. That's not my comfort zone musically or cinematically or in terms of literature. But I really enjoyed it so much. I really did. And I'm not going to talk about the end, but I got to the end and I was like, oh my God. So the story is set. It's kind of a steampunk, right? Would you say?
Correct. Yeah.
And, it's set in this city, very post-apocalyptic kind of landscape, bodies piling up everywhere. You've got this, everything is very sort of generically laid out, because I think humanity has sort of died off at this point, if not literally, and in a lot of cases it has, but also just sort of figuratively, that there isn't that heart attached to it anymore. So you've got the Mechanized Allegiance, which is a gang, right? Okay, but it's sort of like almost seems like an urban legend. You've got these people who will basically, they're grave robbers, right? They bring the bodies, they dump them in the pile, and they take whatever they want. And I loved the name, the body scratchers, because it's so visceral, and you really see that. And then there's this group called the Watchers. Okay, now the Watchers, aptly named, watch these atrocities as they're occurring, kidnappings and murders and all kinds of crime, which is just going completely unabated because there's really nobody driving the bus anymore. And they're recording these things. And then all of a sudden, August 15th comes, they just disappear. They're gone. Okay, we don't know where they went. And the story comes from the pages of a journal of one of the Watchers that was discovered. So you framed it really nicely. Like, I'm already sucked in, right? Because it's like, well, holy shit, this city sounds so interesting and dark and miserable, but there's still a body there. The Watchers are kind of the conscience of the society at this point, even though they're not they're not saving anybody, but they're just recording things. It's an archive of life as it is on this, in this place. And so I don't want to talk, which I've already done, but you can tell I really love this story. So did the characters come to you first? Was it more the plot? Was it, how did you, I don't know how much you write in general. I'm guessing based on the story and how good it is, like a fair bit, but how did the story come to you?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was the first thing I wrote. It was a 300-page book, and I got it down to 40 pages. So there was a lot of it that didn't need to be in there.
Wow. Wait, this started as a 300-page book.
It's a 300-page novel.
And you distilled it to less than a sixth of its length. That's, and it works. That's impressive. Oh my goodness. Okay.
There was a lot of description that didn't need to be in there. Like, for argument's sake, I will think of things from a granular level based on well, I used to be in IT, so I used to sort of taking stuff down to a granular level, looking at it, and then thinking, well, what if this happens, that happens? So, give you an example of the book, it would be something like if somebody would, when the bodies were being snatched, I would go into the description of the mud and the different colors of the mud and the insects inside the mud, and it didn't stop. So there was a lot.
You know what though, that you may have to release that separately. You know, there are a lot of. I mean, look, Tolkien had a whole book that was just basically like this person begat that person begat the other. You know what I mean? Like it's if you can, there are definitely there are readers who would absolutely eat up that level of detail. But I understand what you're saying, that you know you got to the, pardon the expression, given the subject of the story, but you got to the meat of it, you know, by editing it down. So, okay. So how long did that take you to write then, if it started as 300 pages?
So I started it in 2013 because I wanted to turn my hand to as much as I possibly can in life. And I thought writing has always been something that I've really struggled with. English is something that I really haven't got that much of a good grasp on. And I think I struggle a lot with sort of reading, and I struggle a lot with sort of getting things in a particular order. I'm always sort of rejumbling things about and not happy with the finished outcome. So when I started writing this, I wanted to sort of just, I guess, sort of pay homage to sort of like Lovecraft and Stephen King, and to Edgar Allan Poe, James Cameron for Terminator, and do you know what I mean? And just sort of, as
you're listing these, I'm images from the story are flashing in my head. So you absolutely did do that. But yeah, I totally know what you mean. Okay.
And when I started writing it, I couldn't finish it. I could not finish the book, and it drove me insane. And I probably came up with, I don't know how many endings. Maybe I'll publish them with all the different endings. I don't know.
That's cool too.
There were endings. I would go into the ones that isn't the ending of the actual story, but it was ones where we had an happily ever after sort of ending, which didn't fit the narrative. And then we had
I like what you did. Yeah. I know. I kind of feel like it had to end that way. And it's so powerful, and it's not the ending that you necessarily want, but it's the ending the story deserves, I guess, if we're gonna, if we're gonna talk about like it in a Batman kind of way, I suppose.
Absolutely. And I think more than anything, it's not everything has to end in a happy ending. That really, I think that really annoys me with films. It's like, oh God, everything's been blown up, and at the end they all get married and everything works. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, what happened to all that?
These corpses would make a lovely centerpiece for our wedding. Yeah. So yeah, you don't have to.
Will you marry me? Do you know what I mean?
Well, and I mean, I guess what you were saying, and I want to get more into how the story came about to you, but I guess what you were saying is, if based on what you were saying, rather, if this is a reflection of the facets of yourself that you don't usually share to most people, right? It would almost be a betrayal of yourself to just wrap it up with a bow and make a happy ending. And I think the fact that you're putting something out there, not only as a story, but then as an album as well, that's so personal and so raw like that, is really brave. Because I mean, we talk about mental health a lot on this show, and I talk about it a lot in general, because it's everything, right? If you don't have mental health in order, good luck with pretty much everything else, right? So, but I mean, I think that that's tremendous that you were true to the story that you started all the way through and through to the end. And really, guys, I'm serious. If we have not gotten you interested, aroused, whatever about this story by now, what is wrong with you? You need to maybe just go and get it and read it, and then come back and finish watching this. But so you knew the influences you wanted, King and Cameron and Lovecraft and Poe. So then how did it really start to coalesce into what you ended up, those 40 pages that you ended up pulling out that are the story? Like, how'd you get the idea?
So when I think what I did originally was think of a world, and then try and created a couple of key characters. The Watchers weren't in it originally. They were because the Watchers are essentially the band. When we're on stage, we're going to be taking the form of them.
Oh, Oh, okay.
So
So
we're kind of
so you're gonna do these as a almost like a, and I don't mean to denigrate it by saying this, but
no,
almost
no,
like a
no, no,
Rocky
no. Please
Horror
carry on.
Picture Show kind of thing, where it's like you're in character and you're actually. Am I
Yes.
understanding that when you performing
Yeah,
it?
absolutely.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
because I think the way that I see it, which I don't know, might be funny, might not be, I don't know. But like in the story where the Watcher is telling the story, we're the band playing to you, but
Telling
we're
the
telling the
story.
story to you.
Yeah.
So it's sort
Okay.
of, it connects on some
Oh, that's
kind of sort of
cool.
level.
That's
Um,
very cool. How meta. I love that. That's great. Okay, no, that's great. Okay. So the Watchers weren't in it
so
originally.
they weren't
Okay.
in it originally. So I came up with, I think it was the Mechanized Legions were in there, and there was one other character, just the specimen basically was in there,
Oh,
and
okay.
and
No
it evolved.
doctor, no
No,
nothing.
none of that. None of that.
Okay.
No, none of that. It was the original was the specimen would operate on themselves.
Ooh, that's also cool. Okay.
So it
Trickier.
was,
Um,
yeah,
but
yeah,
cool.
yeah, very
Maybe we
much
should
so.
pause here and just kind of get to a little bit of that element of the plot, that the rewiring of humanity. And I don't want to be telling your story for you, but again, as a
Carry
fan of
on.
it, I'm sort of
Oh, thank you.
babbling away here. But the idea being that there's this what is it, track 4, there's this human meat
Yeah,
market, right? That
yeah,
literally these prisoners who've been starved down to acceptable sizes and levels are just auctioned off
yeah,
under a fair amount of duress
yeah,
to these rich people, and that there's this doctor who is buying prisoners and
mm,
trying to fuse them into, I don't know if it's 50-50 based on the descriptions. I would say it's more machine than human, and
yeah.
it's really vivid and it's really graphic and it's really gory, but it doesn't feel gratuitous to me.
No,
Because
good. Thank you.
what I noticed was the way that you wrote, especially the sections, in the castle, you empathize, or at least I did, so much with that
Yeah,
character, the specimen, just this person, who was taken out of their ordinary life and, imprisoned and starved and sold. And then this maniac, drags
mm,
them off to a castle and basically just eviscerates them and then
yeah,
rebuilds them into something. And I really felt more than or shock or disgust or anything like that, just sadness,
yeah,
just sadness and this heaviness of just, it's brutal, and the doctor is just completely psychopathic. There's no care, it's not even like a deranged, bedside manner where it's like, oh hey, you're jabbing IVs in just to get the thing to come
yeah,
back to life. And oh my god, JD, like it really, it put me in the story, and then, and again, I know this isn't a literature show, so I don't want people to forget that we're talking about an album here too, but they are so of a piece,
yeah,
and to be listening to, so in the part where, the doctor has his um just desserts us, and so to say, and then they're the Watcher and the specimen together, and that sadness into madness, and it just, oh, it's such a smart thing to take two things that would work so well alone and then put them together. And you really did what I think you set out to do here.
oh, thank
Because
you so much.
I'm not a fan of the genres. I'm not like, I'm not that I don't like them, but I just don't read them, because I'm a little,
Yeah,
ever since
yeah,
I had kids, I kind of, I used to love horror movies, slasher movie, like gore, whatever. Since I had kids, I can't anymore. It's
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
ruined my brain that way,
absolutely.
but I really liked it. So when people are, people can go and just listen to volume 2 and really, really enjoy it for what it is, as I did the first time through. But man, I got to tell you, reading the story and listening, whole other level, like
Thank
highly
you.
recommend. So,
Wow, thank you.
it really, so you had this idea, you knew where you wanted to go with it, and then you edited it down. How did
Mhm.
you pick And then when did the Watchers come in? And like, so, you know, how did it get to be what's published now?
The story didn't work once you boiled it down. I knew the album was 10 tracks. It couldn't be anything less, because if it was 9, I wouldn't put it out. It had to be an even number, and it had to be a double even number.
I appreciate it.
In order for that to come out. Yeah, I couldn't do 8. No, I can't do 8, because you know, add another 2, there's 10. 10's a happier number. It's a round number. Great, lovely. When it's,
I like that it was a math-based decision. I'm just thinking of that show Monk, where everything has to be in 10. If you've never watched it, you love that show. Yeah, me too.
Oh yes.
So Monk would approve.
Too.
No 9 tracks, no 11 tracks. It's 10 tracks. We'd have to take one out, or just put something in twice or whatever to get it to 10. But okay, so you knew it wasn't working as a story as it was.
No,
okay.
not at all. Not at all. It was more of I don't know. So I thought, well, if there's 10 tracks, how are we going to make 10 tracks fit a 300-page book? So then I thought, well, why don't we do a track a chapter? And why don't we sort of try and sort of line it up as best as we can? I don't know. So I just this is the great thing about being an indie artist, right? You can just wing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
You can just kind of be like, there's no publisher going,
come out of that. That's right.
That.
Exactly. You know? You were under your own steam. Yeah.
So I just kind of thought, well, if I do it and nobody likes it, okay, I tried.
Right.
You know?
And then you do something else. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I thought, well, I took the main essence of the book, and then I added the Watcher, because I thought, well, what we're going to do on stage, I'm not going to dress up as a doctor. I'm not going to be able to afford to get props and, you know, hack up a person.
No,
that
would probably, the venue would probably frown on that sort of thing. Yeah.
I mean,
hey, ribs in the back, guys. You know?
Who's hungry?
What kind of meat is this, Joe? We're gonna keep the hacking out of the show. So good call on that one.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I thought that's how it. Okay.
And then kind of thought, well, if I put in. I didn't want to create stories for 4 characters or 5 characters, being the band is going to be a 4 or 5 piece band.
Right.
So I thought, well, why didn't I just do it from the perspective of one, and then just say that the other Watchers have sort of, I don't know, buggered off for a bit. Yeah. And then this one guy is just relentless. He doesn't stop. He's always going. He's 100% committed to everything. And he's just documenting, because that's his life, because he doesn't exist outside of writing his journal, right?
Well, it's I love that too, because, not to interrupt you, but when you said that, it made me think of how there are a lot of, I think, people who will record things that are especially dehumanizing and horrific, you know, war, murders, you know, all this other stuff. And it's almost like watching it through a lens of a sort, whether it's a literal one with a camera or it's a figurative one of just, oh, you know, I'm taking notes. It gives you distance and a little safety where you don't go mad from the thing that you're 2 feet away from. Because I mean, you know, when you guys read the story, you'll see like the shit that this guy is watching is holy crap. Like it is the fact that he's upright by the end of it. You know, just any sentence really by the end of it, you know, is astounding. So I love that too, that, you know, this is why he exists, without observing, without watching, without archiving this. There is no him anymore. I love that absolutely read in the story. So I'm sorry. So go ahead. So you were saying, so that was you knew that was going to be the band.
Yeah, so that would be the band, and then I thought that would give us a bit of a stage presence. So I sort of had a chat with Neil and said, "What do you reckon of this?" And he was like, "Yeah, I like that." He said, "So let's continue down that route." So once I knew that that's where we were headed, then I could just get rid of everything else that wasn't necessary from the book, which was practically the book, and then come back. And then I thought, well, if I add a doctor that operates on the specimen, but the original specimen was a female. So
yes, there is one part where it says something like she or her, and then after that, it's just them, they, it, you know. And I love that because it just gives you a little glimpse of the humanity right before it's taken away. So
because what I thought, and this is, you know, I got so tied up in my own head, which is normal, but I don't want to ever come across as if I'm being nasty to anybody,
misogynistic or absolutely no, and it does not read that way at all, not at all.
Perfect.
No,
so
not at all.
A lot of my inspiration came from Cradle of Filth's album Cruelty and the Beast, where Ingrid Pitt, the actress, the horror actress, I think, was
Oh,
doing a
yeah.
lot of dialogue on a couple of songs.
This is
So
ringing a
I
distant
thought,
bell. Okay, yeah.
what if we get a female, and at the time the specimen was female, what if
Mhm.
we get a female to sort of tie sort of everything together and read a couple of lines here and there? But then I thought, hang on, what if people then say, oh, hang on, this is a man that's sort of going against women? And I thought, no, I can't do that. So I made it a man. And then I thought, well, hang on, what if now people are thinking, well, hang on, he's a closet homosexual that's going after men?
Oh,
So I
my
thought, right, okay, let's not do that as well. So
You
then
thought
I
about
thought,
this a
well,
lot. Okay.
so then I
I'm
thought, well,
starting to
what
see
if,
why you're so good at writing horror, because you are unfortunately hyper aware of all of the ways that people can be terrible in how they perceive and react to things. That's like sort of
well,
that's the
I,
main horror genre that we all exist in, right? So
I,
you
I
wanted to
think
keep it vague. Okay.
I absolutely, because I never, honest to God, I never want anybody to think that I'm being nasty towards them or I'm
No,
being nasty towards or a minority or whatever, ever.
absolutely.
So I thought, well, I'll make them a them, and then it can be anybody. So if
Right.
you're listening and you're female, then great. If you're listening and you're non-binary, great. If you're listening and you're male, great. Whichever
Exactly.
angle you're
You can
listening from,
Rorschach whatever the hell you want onto it. And
exactly,
yeah, no,
exactly.
I think
And
it's very
therefore,
smart.
I'm not saying, oh, FYI, go out and mutilate people. Not at all.
Yes, I didn't think that was the takeaway from
Yeah,
it.
good. Thank God for that. So
No, I
so I
wouldn't be
thought,
doing
well,
this interview with you if I thought that was your driving aesthetic in life. It's hey kids, go out and mutilate people.
oh
Also buy my
no,
t-shirts. Yeah, no, I
oh
didn't. It
God,
didn't
can you
read that.
imagine that?
No, because
Oh
it is not a glorification of violence at all.
no,
It's a denouncement of it because it's inhuman, and you
yes,
make that very clear. And I felt that viscerally as the
thank you,
reader. So yeah,
thank
no,
you,
there
thank
was
you.
you don't need to worry about that in the slightest bit. So okay,
And I
so,
think
so yeah, go ahead.
I sorry, I think you mentioned something a little while ago that it wasn't overly gory. I think you said it wasn't overly um
Yeah, it wasn't
um
gratuitous. It wasn't,
gratuitous.
yeah, it didn't
Yes,
feel unnecessary to me. No.
good. I'm really glad, because who was it? I want to say it was Stephen King. Was it Stephen King? No, it wasn't. Who wrote The Rats? There's a book out there called The Rats, and it was I in my head says James Herbert. It's not James Herbert. And
So we know it's not Stephen King and not James Herbert, but it could be literally anyone else. It could have been me for all we know. Who?
It's not Stephen King. It's not. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to Google it. I'm really sorry. James.
No,
James
I'm that way too. If you need to look it up, I totally understand. And while
really
you
sorry.
do that, what I will say is, what I'm hearing from you is that the story was the genesis of the album, but the album helped you finish and organize the story, which is really friggin' cool. Like, I mean, and it's smart too, because, and I'm sort of going through all these things that you're telling me now, and revisiting, just, listening to the album a couple times, and reading the story, and it, what you did worked, because the songs and the chapters dovetail beautifully. So if the goal there was to cut down the book into a story that reflected the songs that represented the chapters, you got it. It really does. And I mean, what we can also do while you're looking that up, is we can play, the video, for Food Will Stretch the Flesh, because I think that will also give people, as we're talking about it, a little bit of a frame. But why don't we get to that, and then we can come back and talk about finish sort of the idea there, of what we were discussing. So let's roll Food Will Stretch the Flesh by Death Pigeon.
Scarlet body, the violence prevails, passing
man, that song, like, especially knowing from the story what food will stretch the flesh is really about. I mean, it's not impossible to figure out from the title itself, but man, oh man, it's just, and that one I think is particularly very industrial, you know, and I might be using the word wrong, but what I love is that you, and we'll come back to the wrapping up how you got into the story in a second, but what I love is that the songs, the elements of them, the musicality of them, it all reflects the lyrics and the story really well. So, you know, it's when the subject of the song and the chapter of the book that it goes with are more about machine, you have more of that hard edge, the metal, you know, the narration, you know, even the way that the vocals are done changes, you know, it's this almost, you know, more narrative kind of thing, and even the tone of voice and everything. So I know everybody enjoyed that, but really, seriously, I keep saying it because it's true. You have to, for me, okay, if nothing else, you guys have to go. You have to get the story. You have to read it because you're gonna love the album so much more when you do that. But so just to wrap up the journey that we've taken on getting this, so you know, at this point, you know, you've narrowed it down. Your album has kind of dictated what parts of the book were going to become the story. How did the final elements of it come together where you said, these are my 40 pages, this is the story, this lines up?
Do you know, I've never drunk so much in my life than putting this together, honest to God. You know, because you write something like this, you don't think you've got to revisit every single day to take lyrics from it. And even though it's not that gory, it's not that hard, when you revisit it every day for 6 months, it starts to take a toll.
A lot.
So when I was putting it all together and coming up with lyrics, I didn't want to add too many lyrics into the song and take away from the book. But I didn't want to add in not enough lyrics so it didn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't really know. I tried to go 50-50 with it. But when I was putting the finishing touches to the short story and to just the whole thing, while Neil was then working on the production of the songs, because I'd like to talk about that as well, if I may.
Absolutely.
At some point.
Yeah, no, we got to bring Neil into the conversation.
Under the sun.
Yeah.
And when I was putting the story together, the Doctor didn't exist. I had to create the Doctor, had to then create a lot of other things to work with it. But I think it came together quite well. I still don't know if what I did is right, if I should have put more lyrics in it, less. I don't know. But I think it tells a brief synopsis. So if you listen to it as a standalone, you can come up with either your own idea about it. It might be about weight loss, it might be about whatever, you know. But if you know,
pretty extreme way for weight loss to happen. But I do not recommend. Vox and Guest does not endorse this method of weight loss. Neither does Death Pigeon. It just, oh my goodness, But I see what you're saying. Like it's enough of a. You give people enough of a frame that they have something to go by, but it's not so specific to the story that they can't.
I worried about it. I worried about it so much because I thought to myself, well, what if I don't do it right, or if this is the difficult thing, isn't it? It's what you perceive to be right, and I don't have any formal musical training other than my ear and what I play through covers, you know, and stuff like that from what I love, and so you just kind of again, the great thing about being indie, right? You just wing it. You know,
but I mean, do you really understand though how cool what you've done is? Because it's first of all, not everybody can write fiction, and then not everybody who writes fiction can write it well and have the story be interesting, which you've definitely done. Like, definitely done. Seriously, guys, go read this story. I don't get any royalties from it. I just really like the story. And then you've got this album. And I mean, you know, the one of the things I noticed about, you know, volume 2 versus volume 1 is that, as I said before, there is a through line musically. You know, you've got your orchestral elements, you've got all the atmosphere, you know, even going from covers to originals, you know, the set works well together, you know, because you didn't have to name this volume 2. This could have just been the rewiring of humanity. It could have just been something that had absolutely nothing to do with the first. But by naming it that, you've tied them together in a way. And I think it makes a lot of sense too, because if this story is steeped in your psychology and who you are, like who you really are, then having an album that introduces us to you musically based on influences that you've had and kind of homages that you're doing, it sets us up beautifully to move into these originals here. And so, I mean, you know, for those of you who've listened, you already know, but the album starts off, you know, again, there's a real horror feel right off the bat. I mean, it's clear what we're in for. You know, and later on, I wanted to ask you about the visuals, you know, because if you go on Spotify and you're looking, there's all this, you know, holy crap, you know, I mean, when you're watching it, it is definitely, don't watch it with the kids around, folks. But, you know, it's, and even the first song, you know, it's called The Nightmare Begins, but like it ends on this very almost sci-fi note. You know, there's and I was like, okay, and that works great because, you know, we've got machines in here. And that's what I mean. Like your music and what you've done, everything is so, the integrity of the whole thing and the cohesiveness of it, the elements musically, the way they work with the story, the way they work with the overarching theme, like I don't think you really grasp what you've put together here. And I don't think you grasp that most people can't distill a 300-page story into a 300-page novel rather, into a 40-page story based on a 10-song album that they've also written, by the way. I mean, I think you need to give yourself more credit for this instead of just thinking, oh, I don't know if I did it right. You kind of, not that you've invented this exactly. I mean, I know that there are other things where there are music and stories or movies that go together, but like, it's really good, JD. Like it really is. And again, and we talked about this earlier, I think off camera, but I mean, you know, as someone who doesn't dabble in these worlds a lot, for me to be as fucking jazzed about it as I am, clearly, like you've done a lot right, you know, and as I think you need to let go of this idea and you can't, you know, as whether it's as a musician or a fine artist or a writer or whatever, as a creator, you can't control how people receive or perceive what you do once it's out there, right? I mean, like that so you haven't failed in anything because it's interpretable. That's art, right? So
thank you. No, absolutely. And if I had failed, I quite like failure, to be honest. I think, to be honest, you know, because absolutely it guides you. You know, because 100%. It doesn't mean this is the end. It just means that, whoa, that's not right. You know, so if I had failed, if we'd come out and if nobody had liked it and, you know, whatever, then it would have been a case of, well, we don't give up for the next album. We'll do something a bit different.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
But no, thank you for your kind words. You know, I don't give myself credit enough because I don't know.
Your brain.
I don't know. Probably.
It's your brain. My brain does the same thing, so I totally get it. Greg is always yelling at me like, don't you realize this thing? And I'm like, no, because it wasn't exactly the way I wanted it to be, or it wasn't exactly the way. So I hear you. That's part of the mental health thing too, right? Is that it's you can always find fault with anything, right? But I am your ballast, JD, because if you're ever thinking whatever, you just either pull this up and rewatch it or just call me and I'll be like, dude, it was so fucking good. But I mean, so I do want to focus more on the music, and I do want to get back to talking about Neil and the mixing and the mastering, because the production on the album is spectacular. Like it's really, it does feel like a movie soundtrack to me. It really does, but like in the best way, because it's setting all these moods and it's taking you through this journey. And I mean, and it's a little bit of a different answer, I think it's going to be, from when I ask other musicians this question, but starting from when you've got the idea, okay, and I know that you sort of went back and forth between the music, the story, the lyrics, the production, whatever, but at what point does Neil kind of come into your brain and say, okay, you know, we've got JD's story, we've got JD's words, you know, Neil enters the chat, and then Neil, how much of that is, I mean, obviously the guitar, Is he iterating that? Do you have a sense for what you wanted him to do musically, or at that point is it really a collaboration there when you're putting the song together and getting it down?
The whole of Death Pigeon I always refer to as a 50-50 because that's exactly what it is. We both come at this with entirely different skills. Like when it comes to production, I can record myself. I've got all the kit here to record myself. I've got my instruments behind me, everything, no problem. That's about me for production. I can't mix, I can't produce, I can't do anything like that. I do my basics and I learn. I got my Cube-based manual here. I'm always learning, but it takes me a long time to learn.
And that's a whole other skill set too. I mean, it's a whole
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, from what he's doing, it's taken him 20 odd years. There's a bit of a slight age gap between us. He's not going to mind me saying. He spent 30 odd years in the music industry, so this is something he's honed over decades. Whereas I've just sort of, waddled in and kind of gone, oh yeah, got a story, could write some music.
I'd say you did a little more than that, but okay, I got your point. Yeah. So it's definitely 50-50.
100%. So he left me write the songs and come up with everything how I wanted it to be. So I didn't want songs to be verse, chorus per se. Hunted and Tortured sort of is, but there's a lot of repetition within the chorus there because nothing actually really rhymes with Hunted and Tortured. And I couldn't really take anything else out of the book to go with that. So I just wanted to reiterate the point over and over again. So when I was writing all this stuff, I have my little MIDI keyboard behind me here as well, and I was putting everything down. The orchestrations, because I'm not classically trained, weren't perfect. My drum tracking isn't perfect. Neil would then get my tracks and he would then make it perfect because he is, orchestrally trained, and he would then, make everything, better than how I would give it to him. And in fairness to him, he did say he didn't have to do a lot to my tracks. But in listening, which I'm proud of, but in listening to them, when he's added so much more than I could have ever have thought of. The depth of the orchestra, rather than just adding in a couple of strings, he would add in 6 or 7 different tracks, each in a different scale. So yeah,
it's very full. It's very full. That makes a ton of sense to me. That's how we got it to happen. Okay.
I mean, our least full track in the door was like 78 tracks. I mean, Food Will Stretch the Flesh is like 120. Wow. Sadness into Madness is like 140, 150 tracks. Wow. Because there's stuff going on. There's brown noises, brown notes. There's different audio frequencies being played that you can't, you can't pick up as such. So, and I just let Neil run away with that because I can't offer anything in that way. So how I would give him a track is I would take my MIDI keyboard and I would plan everything out in Cubase. I would take my guitar and I would sort of put down sort of a very basic sort of chord progression. I would then grab my bass and I'd put down a sort of bass progression based on the guitar. Oh, that's reversed. I put down the bass first and then go back to the guitar.
Right.
And then I would record the bass, give him a whole finished bass record with the drums, basic orchestral tracks. Again, probably about 15, 20 tracks in the door, approximately. And then he would then, fill it out and make it into something that I can't comprehend.
No, it is. It's so cinematic, and it's there's so much for the ear to focus on, and you can listen, because I was noticing from the first time to the second time that I listened through that I was hearing things the second time that I hadn't heard the first time. And I have the feeling the next time I listen to the album, I'm going to hear things that I didn't hear because there is so much, but it's not cacophonous in any way. It's not, it's not, it all works very well together. And what you come away with is just this very rich tapestry, and it supports the song, and the album, each of them really well. And then when you put the story together, because everybody's now gone out and bought the story, right? And I mean, one of the things that I love about the album is that you bring back phrases, you bring back riffs, you bring back motifs in that way from song to song. So, The Nightmare Begins, as I said, very orchestral, very, lots of strings, that horror sci-fi kind of feel. And then you go into Taken From Your Life, and the guitar riff is kind of echoing what the strings were doing in The Nightmare Begins. And so we're kind of pulled through from that song, and again, then when you're in the chapter and you're reading and you're listening and the build of what's happening there and knowing that, the next thing is going to be food will stretch the flesh. And oh my God, it really just, I was so impressed by, and again, I keep saying, as someone who's not versed in metal, how thoughtful the album is and how layered it is and how accessible it is and how really easy to listen to. And I don't mean it's not intricate or complex or interesting, but it wasn't a slog for me. It wasn't like, oh God, I really,
that's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. And it really, by the time, and I would say Sadness into Madness is one of my favorites. That song really touched me. It really did. And I loved it the first time through, but after reading the story and knowing where we were and knowing, where the specimen, was at that point and what the Watcher had been through with the specimen at that point and knowing what had happened with the doctor and everything else, it just, it takes you, it really, it's moving, and that's not a feeling I expected to feel in a, I don't know what genre of metal you would consider yourself, everybody I ask this question of is like, well, I'm like, so, I'm like, I hear elements of black metal, but then I hear some death metal, and then and it's like, and I'm like, so is it, because I know the orchestral pieces kind of put it in one, and they're like, well, not about yours specifically, but just genres in general. Well, nobody can tell me what the fuck is going on. And these are metal musicians, so I'm like, all right, I'm over here like Betty Crocker, like I don't even know what the hell, like I'm not going to understand it, but can you even categorize yourself, like what genre you are, or does that, it's not even really matter, I guess, ultimately?
Because the way my brain works, I love a genre. I know it's not cool, but the thing is, how else do you describe to somebody? How else do you describe to somebody what how would you describe sort of, if I was describing like Cradle of Filth for argument's sake, how would you describe that without saying, oh, they're extreme metal or something like that? You just kind of go, oh, well, there's, it's heavy guitars.
But a lot of them are.
Price is growling, I don't know. I think with us, I don't know. I always imagine with the Comic Sans font and the purple and yellow that I'm just going to annoy everybody anyway, which brings me quite a bit of delight, I must be honest.
As we like to say on this show, I call that shit goblin mode, when you're just out there fucking with people and you just gone into shit goblin mode. That's your shit goblin mode. All your merch, that's JD in shit goblin mode. That's what you're buying.
I just really love the idea the gatekeepers getting really annoyed about it. And it's purple, it's not metal, it's Comic Sans, what are they doing? Like,
that's what we're doing. How metal is that? Our entire line of merch is just designed to mess with your head and piss you off. What's more metal than that?
I would say, at a very broad ass angle, we're extreme metal.
Okay.
I would say, if I was to delve deeper, then most of my influences are black and death metal.
Okay. All right. So I was not far off.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Sadness to Madness, it's slowed down, and it's, well, it's not that slow, but there's a lot of black metal influences in that, and a lot of gothic metal influences in that. Frugal Stretch the Flesh is a bit more industrial, a little bit more goth metal based. Sadness, Taken From Your Life, that's a little bit more progressive technical metal. So every single track pretty much, I think, sits within its own genre of sorts, I think. I
I
think.
agree. I mean, as a listener who doesn't know any of the detail, but just somebody who's experiencing it, I believe that because, I started off the question by saying, being moved and feeling all this sympathy and empathy is not an emotion I expected to feel going into, any kind of a metal album. And it
Yeah.
really, and it's great because it was there without the story, which again
Mhm.
I think is a testament to the music. Um,
Thank you.
but again, the story just it enriches the music so much, and it really makes it hit home. But yeah, I mean, you're taking us all over the place, and none of the songs, while they're all clearly meant to be on the same album,
Mhm.
I don't feel like I'm listening to the same thing over and over and over again, which there are albums where you do, where it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
okay, so there's more of this where it's very heavy this and very heavy that, and this is not like that, and I think it makes so much sense to me now knowing that there really was no chicken or egg, right? Between
no,
the story and the music,
mhm,
they really informed each other and kind of
yeah,
inspired each other that makes so much sense to me because you can't really parse them.
mm, no,
But even without that story, anybody just sitting there listening to volume 2 is going to go, wow, that was a fucking ride. Like I went all the way, and it works, and I mean, and even the fact that at the very end, left to rot, right, we're at the end of
yeah,
the story, we're at the end of the album, and you've got like all this synth and all this
yeah,
like and it's a different thing, and again, we're not spoiling the ending because everybody's busy
yeah,
reading the story right now, as we speak, but it makes so much sense. It
yeah,
makes so much
yeah,
sense that was something that showed up more prominently, at least in the last song,
yeah,
because of the
yeah.
way that the story does end. And so, I mean, it just, I don't know how you're going to follow this dude because, because it really just, but man, out of the gate for a first originals album, like
Oh,
nicely
thank you,
done. Because, yeah, really,
thank you.
because I really, I thought the whole idea was cool. And, I was really hoping I was going to like the story because I really like you. And I really did
Oh,
like
thanks
the
ever so
story,
much, Christina.
but
Thank you.
no, so I mean, I guess, that's my next question is I know that you have, collaborations. I know you have the super group.
Mhm.
We could talk about that a little bit,
Yeah.
but do you have a sense of what's next? Do
Oh, yeah.
you do give me the sense, give me as much of the tea as you can. I would love to
I
know what is next for Death Pigeon.
So we are in our sort of as I see us in a sort of like weird sort of metal way. What we're going to do is the albums are going to be accompanied by short stories. So every single album we put out,
Excellent.
we're going to put out a maximum of five. It's how I see it. Five
Oh,
albums. I think I like things to come to an end. I
okay.
like things to have, they have a finite life, and whatever. It might take us 20 years to get out five albums. I don't know. You
I
know.
don't know whether I like the idea of it taking longer so we have longer with Death Pigeon, or I hate the idea of waiting that long for more Death Pigeon. So I'm not really sure. But okay, so
I,
but so
I,
this is Death Pigeon has a lifespan in your
I
head
think so.
already.
I, I,
Okay.
I think so. I don't want to over egg the pudding. I don't
Mm,
want to sort of try and do something I can't do.
mm,
If something doesn't come naturally, or if I haven't got any way to sort of to keep the momentum going in a believable and in an honest way,
mm.
then I don't want to do it. Death Pigeon, honestly, here's something. Death Pigeon was meant to be a one album band. That was it. All Neil was doing was basically I'm probably going to well up when saying this. I owe so much to that man.
Take your time, JD. No, you've been
it,
through a lot, and having a friend like that is rare. So
yeah,
I'm in it with you. Take your
yeah.
time.
All he was doing basically to begin with um, a, was putting out an album, um, because that was something that I always wanted to do. And when we were talking right at the very beginning, I was saying, I got these ideas. I wanted this. He said, yeah, let's get it done. I know we've been over this in the beginning.
Mhm.
But then he turned around and he said, come on. He said, I'll do it. He said, I won't charge you production. I won't charge you anything. He said, we'll do it as mates. He said, we just get right there. He said, we get it done. And then when I said to him, once the album released, and I said, people listening to it, I said, people are actually listening to it, and stuff. And he was like, oh my God, are they really? I was like, yeah. And, we couldn't believe that people were actually listening to it.
I love that you were both surprised by that. Neil has no more confidence in himself than you do in you, apparently. So, geez, we got to get you guys a life coach or a life pigeon or something. I don't know. Okay. So one album, okay. And then.
Yeah. And then after this, I said, well, I've started another couple of short stories. I said, are you up for doing a bit more? And I said, I've got in my head, I said, I've got a 5-album thing. And I said, the albums will have a short story, and the EPs that come out in between the albums will be just up to us to do whatever the fuck we want to do.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So what we're working on next is we're working on an EP, a 4-song EP, no short story. Each song, if we can pull this off, each song is going to be a different genre. So
now wait, do you mean a different genre within the metal umbrella? Or do you mean
a different genre within the metal umbrella? But
okay, so you're not going to be doing like a disco song or anything like that.
No, okay. I don't think so.
I was going to say this is a scoop for Vox and Guest right here. Death Pigeon goes disco. I love it. You've got an ABBA song. You've got okay, so a different metal subgenre per. Okay, wow. Okay.
So the next track is going to be totally in Welsh. It's going to be a continuation, pretty much, of a continuation. It's going to be a logical successor to Volume 2. So there's going to be elements that sound a lot like Volume 2. It's going to be short, because I love short tracks that just come in, punch you in the face, and then walk out.
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved that. And a band that really did that so well was the Berserker. Really short, really fast, in your face, and then they left. And you're like, what the hell have I just listened to? So it's going to be, I think it's about 2.5-3 minutes long, I think, if I can remember. And it's got a lot more timing changes right the way through it. It's a little bit more melodic in places. There's no orchestra. It is just metal.
Wow. Okay. That's going to be a departure for you.
It's going to be something a bit different. We're going to bring back the orchestra in the other albums and in the other songs, but we want to do something that's a little bit different. We just want to try, because we want to sort of experiment a bit. We don't want to keep on going down the same lines.
But it's not as if you only did one thing on Volume 2. No. So no. I mean, I think your fans are gonna follow you just fine on that, because it'll give you freedom too, because you're not being slavish to a narrative, right? So you really can do whatever the hell you want, and then just get in and get out, and just hit people over the head with it, and then go to the next thing. I mean, so how it sounds like that's pretty. Is that still mostly in conceptual, or have you started? No. You're actually your work.
It's all we've done the drums, the bass is recorded, I've done the lyrics, I've translated that then into Welsh. I've given the track to Neil. Neil is now, rather than me coming up with all the guitar stuff like I did on Volume 2, I've given the track to Neil for him to come up with his own guitar, because I want people to see what he's able to do, because the guy took a Christina Aguilera song, covered it, and turned it into a Dragon Force song at like 300 beats a minute. So I really want people to see what he's
the mind behind that. Yeah,
exactly.
And the talent. Yeah,
absolutely. So he's got that track now. And then when I get that back, I'll be recording the vocals, and then we'll be getting the cover art done and sort of getting that out there.
I'm glad you mentioned the art, because I did want to get back to that. The visuals on Spotify, but just in general, the artwork. Yeah. Who does that? Where does that come from?
So the artwork for Volume 1 was a photograph I took using my infrared camera. And I really quite liked. I was walking through a forest and everything was pitch black, and there was just this little circle of light, and you can't see it in the photo because of the style of camera that I use, but it had this beautiful ray of light that just came straight down, and the whole other forest was pitch black apart from this little circle. So I thought I'd take a photo of that. Volume 2 didn't pan out how I wanted. That's partly drawn by me and partly AI, unfortunately.
Hmm.
I had an artist lined up for it. As soon as they figured out that it was for an album, they put the price up by 300 quid. So
It's like saying
I
the
had
word
to,
wedding. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's my fault. I was so excited. I was like, it's an album. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. And he was like,
Oh,
oh, so that's like going to be like £400, like almost $600. So I was like, I can't do that.
yeah.
You know, so I
Next
didn't
time
want
you got
to.
to work with Mama's Maiden Studio, they'll hook you up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have worked with them as
I know,
well.
yeah, they've already done,
Yeah,
yeah, but I mean,
absolutely.
just they
Yeah.
will not gouge you on album prices. I
Yeah.
think
Oh
it'll be
no,
just
no,
fine.
absolutely not. So I was going to bring the bowl up here, but I haven't got it. The bowl at the on the front. Let me look at the album. The bowl at the front. That bowl is in my kitchen. Uh, on the inside cover, there's another bowl with an eye sitting in it. That bowl is in my kitchen. So I drew the bowls and then added like the water, I think at the time, and then I put the image into AI, and then it gave me. I think I entitled it "Human Soup," and it actually gave me a human in soup in the bowl that I had drawn. So yeah, it's kind of a 50-50 sort of thing. Probably more
Okay.
AI than
No,
50-50.
that's very cool. And so for the Spotify visuals for the songs, what about those? You
Yeah,
know,
again, those are AI. Yeah,
that was
yeah,
all AI. Wow,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Those were, because I
It's
mean they were really it looked like you were, especially at the end, left to rot with the down the hallway and beating on the door and what, like that all really looked.
Oh, sorry. That is
Yeah, the
what is that?
moving visuals.
Oh, that, yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the stuff
Hi, I'm
coming in from my
Christina
own
and I'll
stuff.
be telling you about Death Pigeon today, JD.
Oh God, I'm so
No, it's
sorry.
all right. I was not
Um,
very clear in that because I did say artwork with it, which implies a static thing. But then I was also thinking of the moving visuals because those are
yeah,
kick you in the face too.
that was Pexels, the website Pexels. If nobody's heard of Pexels, then check out Pexels. It's
Yeah, no,
what do they call it? Creative Commons video and photos where you can just go and
oh,
take
that's
and
so
you
cool.
know, yeah, and I didn't know about it really, but I wanted to know how everybody else was creating these incredible sort of like highly produced works. And Neil was like, "Oh, check out Pexels, mate." He said, so he gave me a load of different
Oh
URLs to
wow.
check out. I looked them out, and yeah, I was stunned just to see the level of quality that was there. And people were like, "Yeah, just take it." So I've
It
donated to a
really,
couple
yeah,
that
it's
we've
really
used just to say
good.
thanks. But
Wow.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
all
it
it's all
worked
Creative
really well.
Commons.
Unbelievable.
Thank you, thank you.
Unbelievable. No, that I mean, so you are already moving forward. You've already got
Yeah,
new stuff in the works, and
yeah.
anybody that we've talked to so far who's in the super group has mentioned the super group. So I might as well
Yeah.
ask you about your experience with Zealots. So that's it's you and Neil, Death
Yes,
Pigeon. You've got Encircled
yes,
Throne, Jam
yes,
Steak, Anger
yes,
Overdose, and Narok.
yes, yes.
And you wanna tell the people at home a little something about that because I'm very excited about this project because the band's together. It's gonna have to be great. So give me the JD read on the super group that you're now part of.
So we've all been sort of collaborating behind the scenes, now and again, and we thought it would be a good idea to just kind of come together and see what we could come up with. So we've got a few things planned. I'm not going into details because I don't know
No,
what has
no,
been
you
said and what
can't.
hasn't.
You
So
can't.
I'm just going to leave it there. But yeah, what I love about it was that everybody was on the same page. We were all like, "Should we do something?" And then this appeared, and we were all like, "Yeah, this is great." And what I love about it is every single one of us is a different genre, a different style, everything is different, And
Mhm.
I hope that's gonna make some really interesting stuff when we come to write some
I
originals.
think so. I think so because you're not so different that I can't see how those things would work
No,
together. It's not like
no,
somebody put David Bowie and, Britney Spears, sorry, Anger Overdose, and
all anger overdose.
Chris Cornell and I don't know, Cradle of Filth in a room together and was like, go, I mean, like, and then ABBA is doing the choruses or whatever. Like, I think it'll all work out fine. But I think it's, you seem to be someone who, even if it's different versions of your own viewpoint. You seem to like to put a lot of different perspective into what you're doing. So I can imagine that this is a fun one for you, having all these
It
very
really
talented
is.
people coming together from all these somewhat different places. So yeah,
It's
I'm excited.
amazing. Oh, thank you. It's amazing. Yeah, we are as well, because I think we didn't expect the community to come together. We certainly didn't expect to, on a daily basis, be talking to people from Australia,
Yeah.
America. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
Yeah.
I didn't expect anything, and yet we're all hitting each other up. We're all talking like as if we've known each other for 20 odd years.
It's
And
true.
let's be honest, none of us have known each other for like 5 months, 6 months. Do
It's
you know what I mean?
true. It's
It's
true.
amazing,
It's
and
true.
it's so much
It's
camaraderie and
That's the best
genuine
part.
love, and that is amazing. And nobody's worried about upsetting anybody. Everybody's like, oh, let's do this, let's do that, let's try this, let's try that.
Yeah.
It is wonderful, absolutely wonderful, and it's something I'm really excited to see where it goes.
I know.
Even
Me
if
too.
it's just a bit of fun away from the main band, great. I'm up for it.
That's
You
right.
know,
It's I think it'll probably end up being more than that. But it's true, we do forget that. I mean, I at least have only known you guys since April, I think.
April. Yeah,
We're in
yeah,
June now, so it's been
yeah,
2,
yeah.
maybe 3 months. And I
Right.
still don't know how I fell down the metal rabbit hole. I still don't remember what got me here. I'm so glad that
Band
whatever.
together. You're a fantastic group. Band together. You made band together. You brought everybody together from loads of genres. I can't thank you enough for doing it.
Oh, thank you. I really always like to be very clear that all I did was I looked at all of these musicians who were being so generous and so supportive of each other, and really wanting to get each other's stuff out there. And there was just, as I think I said, I don't remember to whom, but it might have been on one of my lives actually, that coming from a cover band community, there's a lot of competition, which makes sense if you think about it, because we're all kind of covering the same things over and over again, not that we don't play different things, but I mean, like, you play songs that people know that they want to hear, right? So there's a certain pool of stuff that really is always going to land. And so there is a lot of competition. And so I'm looking at all these indie musicians writing originals, putting stuff out there. And I mean, you got Electric Tardigrade over here, like doing all this electronica stuff. You've got, Death Pigeon and the whole metal community. You've got Dean Powder Band, over here doing everything, genre wise, and Michael Body's over here with more country. Like there's just like all these different genres. And I'm watching everybody, and all I thought to myself was, if these people worked together, what they could do. So all I really did was just gather the chickens. I just kind of put everybody together and said, okay, now you guys are all interested in doing the same thing. You all want to help each other. Did I expect it was going to be over 2,000 people? That, no, but I mean, it's been incredible. And, what it's done, this community has changed me. It changed the trajectory of everything. I was never planning on doing an interview show. I've never done this before, but like, I get to talk to people like you. This is my Friday night, like how awesome is that? And to listen to music that I probably never would have heard, and I was missing out. So I'm just, to see you guys all coming together, I feel like a proud mommy, it's like my babies, they're all going out and growing up, but I mean, and I'm not taking any credit for anything. I had nothing to do with it, but just to see all these collaborations that are, coming in, and all these bands that are great. It's just, it's so kick ass. And I'm so excited to hear what the 5 of you do, because it's gotta, I mean, just thinking about you and Jam Steak and Anger Overdose, even just the 3 of you in a room together, and what that's going to look like. And then you put Narockin and Circled Throne in there, and it's like,
right.
So
yeah. No,
that's going to be a ride.
It's something that when we all come together, we're like, can we do this? What are we doing? We're just like, let's have fun. That's what we're doing. You know what? And it's been great. I can't pick out an individual moment, because every single part of it, genuinely every single part of it, has been as great. Even if it's just somebody going out, is this any good? What you reckon about this? How's this? How's that? Whatever it is, everybody's coming together. And it's like a group like band together. Everybody is coming together, and everybody's talking. Everybody is listening to everybody's stuff. Everybody is talking about other people, and it honestly is mind blowing.
I've never seen anything like what you guys are doing with that group. And when I was trying to think of a clever name for it, and I was like, what am I going to call it? And I was like, well, I'm putting all these bands together. And I was like, oh, and we could band together and us. Yeah. And then I'm cleverer than I think I am sometimes. And I don't know how clever it was, but it had a modicum at least. And so, but I did not expect, again, just I really, and I get it, because as I've said, in other places, I spend more time now talking about other bands than I do about my own, to the point where sometimes I forget that I'm in one, and I should probably be talking about it a little bit more, because, that is kind of supposed to be my job. But like, I get it. I get why everybody does it this way, because, and it's not just the kind of, oh, hey, great job. I'm seeing comments where people are like, wow, in that second half of the bridge, when you brought in this and what, like, people are really listeking, and
really into it. Yeah.
And I mean, like, just I was talking to Fostagrim Records earlier, and Kevin, and he was just talking about how, like, he wasn't expecting that people are going to be listening to his. It's exactly what you said. Oh my God, people are actually listening to the album. You and Neil are over there surprised, and like, we're not surprised, because we hear what you're doing, and why wouldn't we be listening to it? But it is the life of a musician, right? That you put stuff out there and you don't know if it's going to find an audience. You just don't know. So, I mean, to see musicians creating an audience for other musicians, it's kind of restored my faith in that's the good rewiring of humanity, right? We're rewiring it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's very difficult. At least I find it difficult. This is something I've asked myself a lot over the last, like, was it June? Yeah, 7 months, I think, 6 months, 7 months, is, did I give enough respect to the indie community before I got into it? And honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sure there are CDs I've got here, and I'm sure there's CDs I've got there, which there are indie musicians in it. But I couldn't differentiate between one who was indie and one who was signed or not, rather, indie. So seeing everybody come together and all the genres, that excites me more than anything.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we're talking about genres again. Not allowed to do that. But,
no, but you're a synthesist. It makes sense to me. You like to do that. You like to take different things and put them together. So I could see why that would light your brain up. Totally.
And you've got, like, Outlaws from the Cross on one side, Christian country rap, I would say. Sorry if I get it wrong.
No, that sounds right to me.
And then you've got Anger Overdose, you've got Encircle Throne, Shovel Monster, Superposition. Everybody's doing their own thing. Everything sounding as unique as the last. Nothing sounding the same. Everything sounding so entirely different. And it's exciting. And as I said a few times through this, we're independents. Do what you want.
That's right. That's
there's going to be somebody out there that listens. There's going to be somebody out there, even if it's just a handful of people, they're still going to listen.
Well, and I think it's about turning the difficult part of being an indie musician from a obstacle into an advantage, right? That, okay, well, I don't have a record label telling me what to do, but I don't have a record label telling me what to do, So
exactly.
And I mean, right. Like, I think that the rewiring of humanity might have been a hard sell depending on who you were signed to, because it is. And you didn't even have to worry about it, because you're just out there, you're doing your thing, you're doing whatever the hell you want. And thank God, because we got to hear it and read it, right? As everybody done. I'll wait if you're on, like, the last couple pages. We can just, we could get some tea or whatever. We'll just wait while you finish. But no, I mean, JP,
thank you.
Seriously, like, and I'm so excited to hear that the albums, that there are going to be EPs in the middle, so that actually it's not just 3 more things that we're getting from you. It's going to be 3 plus. But I'm so glad that there are going to be more short stories, because I think you need to keep writing in all your formats. Like, you really do.
You.
And I think that the reason that the story resonated with me so much, despite the fact that it was super intense, and not something that I might ordinarily pick up to read, was because you put so much of yourself into it, because you were honest, because you were raw, and you were, showing a side of yourself that people often don't, and I think that we all have those, right? We all have those sides. I mean, even me, I'm pretty much here who I am everywhere. I don't have much of an ability to dissemble, but there are things you don't share with people, right? You're not going to go on camera and talk about certain things, but to put that in a story, and sure, there aren't details, but I think that's why people are going to really understand what you've done, and feel it as they're reading it, and then because you're also in the music, and then Neil's in the music as well. And that's another cool thing, is that we're going to get to hear Neil unrestrained, Neil released, Neil doing his own thing and coming up with his own stuff. And it just sounds like I'm hoping maybe you'll change your mind. And if you have to end at a certain point, maybe it'll be on 10 instead of 5. Remember, we like the number 10. So let's aim for, I'm going to try and double it now, so that we've got that. And then that could take 40 years. And then, then we'll all be too old to hear the music, and it'll be fun.
I mean, maybe. I mean, the only reason I'm saying 5 is I think, 5 is I see it as sort of a nice number. You can take a few years to get there, but I don't want it to ever seem as if we're just doing it for the sake of doing it,
Right.
Because that wouldn't feel right to me. If I've not got something to give, I'd rather not try. I'd rather be like, you know what, we had great over here, great time. That's where it stays. And then
you don't want
to
to
something else.
Season 13 of a show like The Simpsons, like you don't want to be season 49 of The Simpsons where, it was over 20 years ago. You want to go out where you feel like you're still saying what you want to say, and you're not just putting things out there to keep going. Right.
I think so. I've seen a few of my friends have been assigned over the years, and I've seen what it's done to them. And a few of my friends that are still indie musicians, I've seen what it's done to them. And I've seen it from both sides. I've seen the time pressures from the signed. I've seen the has my headset just died? No, I've seen there we are. That one had died. I can see the time pressures from the signed. I can see the all the stresses from the indie side. From my friends on the indie side. And I think that takes something away from what you're trying to do with creating music. I think, I don't know, maybe it's just me looking at it and not really understanding what I'm seeing, possibly. I don't really know, but I don't ever want to get to a position where I don't love what I'm doing and it doesn't mean something to me. I just want to do it. And if it means that it's 5 and it's done, then it's 5 and it's done. If it's more than, if I've got more to give, if Neil's got more to give, if we're happy with where we're going, we're going to keep on going. But
well, what's good is if you get to 6, then we know you have to keep going, because you have to get to 10.
Get to 10.
No, but I hear you, and I agree too, because I think that it's very hard to be creative when you're stressed and when you're anxious. It's kind of, they're sort of antagonistic things, and so I get where you're coming from. But I mean, as long as you keep writing and making music, whether it's Death Pigeon or something else. I mean, we know a lot of musicians who have multiple projects going, and they find another iteration of what they're doing, and I mean, and then, you've also got live elements coming in, and, so I think I'm hoping there will be enough to keep Death Pigeon cooing for a great many more albums. But I do respect your integrity there, that that you want to be doing stuff that's true to who you are and true to what the band is about, and to your creativity, both of you. So
thank you, because I don't want to put together a story or an EP or something that I think, oh, do you know what, I don't want to be reading it 6 months down the line and going, I could have done that better. And there's always going to be elements you think you can do better, but I don't ever want to get to a position where I go, oh God, what did I do there?
Right, that you sold out or something. Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I just want to, write about some weird stuff, and then put together some weird music, and then just kind of just enjoy it. Because I've gone back, I have read the short story again, and I do still like it. There's nothing about that I think, you know what, I shouldn't have put that in, or I should have maybe added this from the novel or whatever. So that's why I think if I've got an end in sight, then I know at some point it's going to come to an end. And I don't know, I'm just maybe sounding like a crazy person, but
I don't think so. No, and I mean, look, I mean, you're genuine, and that comes across. And I think that you want to just make sure that what you're putting out there is genuine. You know, that it's authentic and it's coming from the right place, and it's creativity, and you feel like it's something you're proud of that represents you, and that other people will like it. And I mean, you know, I think we could use more of that. You know, there's enough product out there in the world. You know, we like the good stuff. We like the good stuff. And Death Pigeon is very definitely good stuff. So I wanted to get us to wrapping up here, because this has been so much fun, and I could talk to you forever. But I'm sure you have other things, and it's actually pretty late there. Come to think of it, isn't it?
1:15 on Saturday morning, but it's fine. We go for as long as you want to go for. I've slept for 5 hours during the afternoon, and you're
like, I have Red Bull. A monster. Yeah, exactly. You're just pounding energy drinks, whatever. But I like to wrap up the show with the segment we call "In the Vox Seat."
Okay.
So I am going to ask you 5 questions, and I'm really interested to hear some of these answers specifically from you, because just because of who you are and how your brain works, and I mean that in the best way. So the first question is, if you had to sum up your music in 5 words or less, what would you say? Now, I realize I'm asking this of the man who wrote a 300-page book and distilled it into a 40-page story. So you may need to start with 130 words and then give me 5 out of those. We can just edit that out. No, but I mean, so if 5 words or less, could you do it? Some can, some can't.
How would I describe my music in 5 words? Yes. Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
I think I've got 3. Can I get to 5? Yeah, I may have to double up on one.
You can hyphenate it.
I mean all this in the best ways, mind. When I say this, right? I don't mean this as I am self-deprecating, but I do mean these in the best way. Weird, brutal, strange. What the fuck? And did they just say that?
Okay.
What?
Actually,
I don't know.
That's oddly fitting. Now that I come to think of it, I always think of weird as a good thing, by the way. To me, that's a compliment. Weird is always a good thing. But okay, so weird, brutal, strange, what the fuck, brutal. And did they just say that? Okay, it's definitely more than 5 words, but we are going to hyphenate all of those, and we're going to make it work.
Oh, no, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
It's so many more than that, but that's okay. It is not 300 pages, so I'm gonna call that a win for you, JD. You're fine. You're fine. Okay, so your favorite thing about being a musician?
Oh God. Favorite thing about is this about being an indie musician or about being a musician?
You can answer it whichever way you like. I like both of those questions. You can even answer both questions if you want.
Indie musician, freedom.
Okay.
Musician, sonic therapy.
Okay. So freedom, indie musician, that makes a lot of sense given everything that we've been talking about, that do whatever the hell you want. And then sonic therapy. And now, why is that specific to musician and not indie musician? Is it more just that that's also part of being an indie musician, but the indie piece of it means that you have freedom that you don't in general?
Yeah, I think so. And because I like to play a lot of music which isn't indie, you know. And I think I sort of, in my brain, I sort of categorize that as being, as musician as a whole, whether it's tribute, whether it's cover, whether it's originals, whether it's whatever the many sort of different sort of designations that there could be. I think that's one that transcend, that sort of, can't remember what word that was, but that's one that sort of crosses over everything, really. It's you know, no matter what you play, no matter, you know, if it makes you feel good, then it's doing its job, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Or if it makes you feel anything, really.
Just makes you feel.
Because I mean, I won't say that your music made me feel good, but it made me feel a lot, and that was good. you know? And I don't think it was intended to make me feel good. You know, stories about people being ripped apart and fused to machinery generally are not feel good movies of the year. You know, you're not going to see like Jennifer Aniston starring in that movie or whatever, but like, you know, it is, if it gets you to feel something, you're alive. Right. And so I totally understand where you're coming from. Okay, great answers. So now flip side of that, least favorite thing about being an indie musician, a musician, same, both, either, whichever you prefer.
Oh God, how long have you got?
Well, I don't know how much Monster have you got there to drink?
Not enough. Least favorite thing about being a musician. This is okay. Yeah, this is okay. Least favorite thing: procrastination, not getting out of my own head, confidence, lack of, imposter syndrome, and the thought that everybody is going to hate everything that I put out.
Now, is that specific to music?
I think so. I don't feel that way with anything else. I never felt that way in my career of 24 years.
Okay. All right.
I think music is such a, no matter what it is, you give a piece of yourself. You know?
If you're doing it right. Yeah, you do. Yeah. No, that all makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah,
we're going to have to, seriously, you and I are going to have weekly talks where I get over the whole imposter syndrome, lack of confidence thing with you. Dude, seriously. Like, I mean, you've taken somebody who does not listen to this stuff or read this stuff, and you've made me a fan. Like, that's not a small thing. It's really not. Well, so
the album wasn't going to be released. I sat on it for about 4 days because I didn't want people to hear my vocals. So yeah, there's lots of stuff. Yeah. With stuff like that.
Oh no, and I see, and I thought the vocals were great. They added so much, and the way that you changed your voice depending on what song and what you were doing, and I but again, I don't want to sit here and try and smooth over years of you know what your brain tells you, because I know that I can't do that, but I can tell you that none of what you were worried about seemed like it would be anything I would think you would need to worry about, because it all works so well, and I think better even than you have fully grokked at this point. So if it takes,
thanks ever so much.
We just got to get more people telling you so that you can we got to drown out the voices in your head and then replace them with ours. That's a good kind of hearing voices, right?
That really means a hell of a lot to me coming from you, because your voice is absolutely beautiful. So, thank you ever so much.
Then we'll get into my imposter syndrome and my lack of confidence in my voice. And then you can interview me. It'll be Pigeon and Vox, right? We'll just turn it all around. So, okay. This one I really want to hear, especially because I'm going to give you a little leeway on this that I don't usually, just because specifically the way that you run with your music. If you had to choose, and everybody hates this question, but I ask it anyway, that's why. If you had to choose one album to listen to, only one, for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I can give you, well, let me see if you can answer that first before I offer the leeway. Let's see, because I find sometimes the duress of that kind of a question comes out with answers that are even better than what people would do if they had more options.
So by one, do you mean two?
What is it with you and even numbers, JD? If it's a double album, maybe. We'll see. But all right, throw it at me. Let's see. What are the two that came to mind?
Type of Negative, Life is Killing Me.
What?
Type of Negative, Life is Killing Me.
Okay.
Wow. And Cradle of Filth, Cruelty and the Beast.
Okay. All right, I'll give you two. Fine.
But if I had to pick one, Type of Negative, Life is Killing Me, 100%.
Why that one?
Pete Steele is my absolute idol, and at 21 I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He had bipolar disorder. He was, a 6'8" man. I'm 5'10" and weirdly shaped. And I think I looked at him as, even from when I was like 14, 15, when I was cutting myself and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know you're not right, but you don't know what that is. And then somebody like him in the limelight turns around and says, hey, you know, this is me. And then he
Mm-hmm.
goes into his suicide attempt. He goes into, you know, everything. And then he not just him, I mean the band,
Mm-hmm.
write an album like World Coming Down and Life Is Killing Me, and especially a song like Anesthesia. And they're just, even though there's lots of humor in the songs, there's so much of them in the
Mm.
songs, and I can relate to a lot of what they're saying. And to have an album and a band, and not just that, but to have four men that were willing to talk about stuff like that,
Absolutely.
even if it is from a jovial perspective, you know, they genuinely lived it.
Mm-hmm.
And Pete is no longer with us, and he is the reason I picked up bass.
I remember,
And
yeah.
you know, he is an absolute god to me in the same way that people revere Lemmy.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm.
think, you know, that album, when I heard that album and I heard everything about Less Than Zero, you know, Anesthesia, Life Is Killing Me, it just, even if it's not the real reasons behind the song, the reasons that I've put behind the song, you know, they just mean so much. 100%, you know. And I
That's a
think that,
great answer. And it fits you, because it's authentic.
yeah,
And absolutely representation, whatever it is, it can really mean the difference between life and death for people, and I think that, you may find that there are people who look at volume 2 like that. You just don't know,
I mean,
it's
I hope so, but I don't know.
leave room for that possibility. That's all I ask you to do. That's as good as I think I'm going to get from you at this point, because we haven't started our weekly love fests yet, but we but we will. So, all right. So to end it on a really serious note, then the main question here: your toilet paper roll, over or under? Do you
Over.
have the paper dangling over top, or do you
Yeah,
have to pull it out from under the bottom?
no,
Which
over,
and why? Over.
over,
Okay.
over.
Okay,
Always
show
over,
your work.
100%.
Explain your answer. Tell
Yeah.
me why.
Why would you want the toilet paper against the dusty door, or against something that an insect
Ooh.
may have walked on, like a spider? No disrespect to the spider community out there. Um, when you can have it over, and you know it's clean, it's fresh, it's easy to get to. You're not touching. You're considering other people because you're not touching the rest of the roll in order to get it off, because
Mm.
the bit you're going to use is right there.
Look at this. This
I
is
don't overthink things at all.
Thank God you do, because then I'm not the only person in the room who's doing it. I like this. It's funny. I ask that question and I get a different answer every time. And I don't even care so much about the answer. I care about the reasoning behind the answer. And yours was a tour de force of nature and hygiene and considerateness and all this. You took it to a whole other level, JD, as I think you do with pretty much everything. In the best way. But listen, my friend, my Pidgey, I am so glad that we did this. I'm so happy that I got to
Thank you, thank
really
you.
take time and just delve into your music. Sorry that we didn't have Neil, but I think you've represented him very well here.
Oh, thank you.
And I mean it, guys. Get the story, get the album, listen, read, do yourself a favor. You will enjoy the album. Rewiring of Humanity Volume 2 was out in February. It's Spotify, it's everywhere. You will enjoy it on its own. You will thank me if you get the story and you read it too. I promise you. JD, you are such a sweetheart. I love you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your time, your talent, your brain droppings like mine, our mutual love of 10 over 9 or 11. I'm right there with you. And please, as long as it feels genuine and authentic, please make as much music and write as many stories as you can, because
Oh,
you
thank
have a
you. I
new
will.
a new official fan in me. So
Oh, thanks ever
don't
so
leave me
much.
hanging, okay?
Absolutely. No, no. Can I just say, just before we go, I just want to thank you
Aw,
for taking the time, not just to talk into me, which I am so grateful for, but actually taking the time to listen to the music and to read the short story and to bring it all together in the way that you have. It's really touched me. Thank you for that.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure.
But also thank you to everybody. Why are you crying? Thank you to everybody that has listened genuinely from the bottom of mine and Neil's heart. You know, never would have thought anybody would have done. But thank you ever so much.
Oh, I love you, JD. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you tune in for the next episode of Vox and Guest. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Cheers.